Shana Tova. My toes curled over the edge of the pool. Ahead of me, the abyss. I stood there in nothing but thin swim trunks. No lifeline, nothing to hold on to, nothing to protect me except my shivering body and everything I could recall in my racing mind. "Okay, jump in," shouted the teacher. All I had to do was cross to the other side any way I could. It shouldn't have been so hard. I'd known for 4 years that this swim test was required for college graduation. Yet here I was, the day before the ceremony, still debating what would happen if I leapt. My grandparents were already on the road, my parents not too far behind. Standing at the edge, I wondered, would I sink and lose myself in the waters? Would I be like the prophet Jonah, descending deeper and deeper, only to be rescued by some miracle or by a merciful teacher pulling me to safety? Perhaps this is the right moment to tell you whether I ever learned how to swim and whether I even managed to graduate from college. After all, you've trusted me now for 20 Yom Kippur sermons. It seems only fair that you know if I really earned my diploma. I grew up with a big pool in my backyard, shaped like a figure 8. One side was shallow, the other deep. I loved the shallow end, where I could put my feet down, jump, splash, and play, always knowing that if I got scared, I could drop my toes to the bottom and feel grounded again. The deep end was another story. Not only was it 8 feet deep, but my pool, shadowed by the trees of a thick, deciduous forest, was subject to collecting countless leaves, making the water look black, murky, menacing, like the tohu vavohu, the chaos before creation. My parents tried to teach me to swim, but I couldn't let go of my mother's soft, loving arms. And when my father tried the throw him in method, I clung to the side of the pool, went limp, and cried my heart out. Even my sister tried. She bribed me with pop rocks to jump off the diving board. I agreed, but jumped as close to the edge as possible, clever enough to cling to safely and never venture across the dark waters to the deep end. The rabbis teach that parents, we don't have many obligations actually towards our children. Provide food, shelter, and clothing, yes. But beyond that, 2 mitzvot. Teach our children Torah and teach your child to swim. So let me ask you, how many of you know how to swim? Swimming, of course, is more than a skill. It is training for life. It teaches us how to move through the unknown, how to trust our own strength when there is no solid ground beneath our feet. And isn't that the world we live in now? Just as Jonah looked out at the dark, restless sea and clung to the safety of the ship, we too find ourselves with him, aware of unknowns pressing in closer than ever. We live in a sea of uncertainty, waters deep, dark, and unpredictable. As Jews, we feel this even more acutely. For a time, we believed anti-Semitism was caged like a wild animal in a zoo, dangerous but contained. We believed history's lessons had been learned, our tragedies so carefully recorded that the world could never forget. Pogroms, we thought, belonged to the past, not to our present, and certainly not in the land of Israel. This is not the world we dreamed of passing to the next generation. Yet it is the water we must teach them to swim in. How then do we teach them? So what did my parents do when I couldn't swim? They did what many of us do. They sent me to swim lessons, to good old Happy Land day camp. There, my counselor strapped floaties onto my arms. With them, I was fearless. I could dart across the pool. Without them, I froze, clinging again to the side. The real question was this: would I use the time with floaties to actually learn so that when they came off, I was ready to swim? Life works the same way. Along the way, we're given people to hold on to, mentors, guides, teachers, who help us cross through the unknown. I've been blessed with such teachers, bearers of Torah, who lifted me, guided me, carried me. But when the classroom ended, when camp was over, when I moved away, could their wisdom still carry me, even without their hand in mine? So let me ask you, who were your floaties? Who held you up when you first entered the water, teaching you how to move when there was nothing solid beneath your feet? Who steadied you as you learned to swim through life's currents, through challenge, through uncertainty, through fear? And who gave you the strength as a Jew, awakening in you love for our story, pride in our people, and the courage to claim it as your own? Today, as the waters rise, we face another challenge. We are losing a generation of our greatest teachers. Their stories give us knowledge of the past, remind us of humanity at its heights and its depths, and offer us moral clarity. Most of all, they teach us hope. For even after enduring history's darkest chapter, they still chose life. They are among the strongest we will ever know, carrying the weight of trauma, anxiety, and grief with every step they take. And yet, they come to synagogue. They tell their stories. They live among us. Having seen evil face to face, they still believe in tomorrow. When I think of this special group of teachers, I think of how blessed I was to know one of them, my kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Post. I told you about her 20 years ago in my first Rosh Hashanah sermon. She was my first Hebrew teacher, the one who placed the Aleph Bet in my hands. I can still hear her voice singing, Aleph Bet Bet. She taught with such warmth that Hebrew always felt like honey, a sweetness that stays with me to this very day. But what I haven't shared is that Hebrew wasn't all she taught me. In that same year, one day, during show and tell, a classmate brought in a newspaper clipping with her picture. In her thick Hungarian accent, she explained it was part of her story, how she went from an ordinary life to losing everything, how she hid in forests and moved from farmhouse to farmhouse. Then, with quiet dignity, she rolled up her sleeve and showed us her tattoo, her number. She told us the Nazis gave it to her to make her feel like a number, something less than human. For years, that was how I understood the Shoah, a time when our people were reduced to numbers. And I knew deep inside that it was wrong to treat anyone that way. That morning in the classroom of Kadima Day School, she could have filled us with terror, but that was not her way. Her voice was gentle, her presence tender. She offered not trauma, but memory framed in hope. Because of her, I never carried the Holocaust as fear. Instead, her story became part of me, woven into my own inner scroll. I carry her voice and her lesson with me wherever I go. When I lose my moral compass, when I wonder why I belong to the Jewish people, I could tell you about all of my years of Jewish education that ground me. But the truth is, at those moments, I turn back to a small circle of teachers, living and gone, and Mrs. Post is one of them. This is the blessing of all survivors of the Shoah. They are, in the words of Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, living Sifrei Torah. As Torah carries our sacred story, so do they. As Torah gives us hope, so do they. As Torah guides our moral compass, so do they. Our community is filled with these living scrolls. To my right, in the back row of this section, sits Erwin Newberg in his wheelchair. Erwin was born in 1919, raised in St. Louis and later Kansas City. At 21, he joined the 90th Infantry Division, where he confronted anti-Semitism not with silence, but with courage. When he heard a slur, whether aimed at him or another Jew, he stood his ground, no matter the cost. He was court-martialed 3 times for defending Jewish dignity, but he never surrendered his pride. Erwin fought in the theaters of World War II, in France, Holland, Belgium, and into Germany. He fought with valor, rising in the ranks, yet the moment that marked him most deeply was not a battle, but what he witnessed at Nordhausen. There, in the V-2 rocket factory, his unit discovered 4,500 corpses of Jewish slave laborers. The townspeople claimed ignorance, though the stench of death hung heavy in the air. Erwin would not let them look away. He forced them to bury the dead with their own hands. He was also a photographer and took pictures of what he saw. I remember some 10 years ago visiting him in his home with his wife Edna. This strong man with tears in his eyes showed me these photos. Moral tears, conveying this was not how the world should be, and this is not what human beings are created to become. And then sits Edith Pelkowitz beside her children. When Edith speaks with me, she is always kind and warm, but never one for pretense. You only have to look into her deep blue eyes to know what she is saying. Don't fool me. Be honest. With me, she is gentle, but her gaze carries a quiet challenge. I am strong. I can take the truth, whatever form it takes. Born in Budapest in 1943, she was only 13 when soldiers shoved her down 3 flights of stairs, her head bleeding, teeth loosened. She sees the weak shot before her eyes. She survives only because of her Aunt Ella's desperate courage, bribing a soldier and slipping away into the night. Her life became a string of escapes, a servant leading her from deportation, a papal safe house with papers that expire, ghettos with people adorned with yellow stars, endless marches. She witnesses brutality beyond words and too few acts of kindness. Later, she states, I cannot forgive, I cannot forget. My only hope is that by telling, history will not repeat. Every time she speaks, she loses sleep the night before, but she tells her truth anyway. And in the middle section of our shul sits Clara Dunitz. To be with her is to feel both history's weight and Judaism's stubborn hope. As a girl in Budapest, she excelled in school despite anti-Semitic quotas. Then come restrictions, the ghetto, the deportation. She marches 500 kilometers with her mother, sharing scraps of food and stolen milk, doing whatever it takes to survive, until the day a soldier turns and shoots her mother in front of her. Clara is then sent to Bergen-Belsen. When liberation comes, she is sick with dysentery, lice, and typhus. A British doctor says it is a shame she survived the camp only to die soon after. Clara hears this and answers, "No way." She fights for her life and wins. When asked how she does it, she says simply, "If you don't believe in God, you can't survive." Even on Yom Kippur in Bergen-Belsen, she did not eat bread. Faith, she says, is something you are born with, a stubborn hope that sustains her. Friends, these names, Erwin and Edith and Clara, are no longer living. Their seats in our sanctuary are now filled by others. And yet, there are still people here that are living survivors. Before I continue, I'd like to ask those who are survivors if you could stand and raise your hand so that we could see you. I see a few. Okay. A room of, all the way in the back, a room of only 1,800 people, and I see 4, maybe 5 people standing. I want to refer us back to the words of Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. Survivor special because they are a living scroll, bearing witness to our history, reminding us of their courage, reminding us of their morality, and carrying with us a sense of amazing hope. When we open the Ark and the Sifrei Torah come out, how do we stand in front of our Torah? How do we act in front of our Torah scrolls? But we stand. I'd like to invite all of us for one moment to please stand for these sacred scrolls that are still in our life. And may we continue to stand with you for many years to come. We are entering a new time, a threshold moment when we will no longer be able to turn to survivals themselves to carry the story. That responsibility now rests with us. We must become the living Sifrei Torah, carrying their words and their lessons into the future. Everyone can please be seated. How do we do this? Back on the edge of my college pool, my future ahead of me, all I had learned within me, I jumped. What would happen? Would the lessons stay with me? Could I apply the skills I had been given? Would I sink or would I swim? And so I ask, what will happen to us? In 10 years, it will be 2035. Those born in 1935 will turn 100. Those born before will be even older. The survivors will soon no longer be with us. Their voices will no longer guide us across the waters. How then will we reach the other side of the pool without them? First, we must keep listening. Just as I had taken countless swim lessons before I was ready to jump, we too must take in the stories of those who remain. The stories of Erwin, Edith, and Clara, along with 3 other beloved congregants, have been recorded on our website, thanks to Candace and Bob Fagan and Ellis and Bonnie Diamond, who thought of everyone in this room 20 years ago. Tomorrow, put on your earbuds, go to the Beth website on your phone, take a walk, and listen to their stories. And when you listen, don't listen like a tape recorder. The historian Yosef Chaim Yerushalmi reminds us, Torah is not history, it is memory. Memory lives in the feelings and relationships it awakens. So let your heart listen. Listen for their bravery, for their devotion to goodness, for their deep desire to belong, for their patriotism. And above all, listen for the hope they carried and let it guide you. My feet touch the cold water. Suddenly, I am no longer standing at the edge. I am immersed. There is no more waiting. It is time to move. And so it is for us. We can no longer afford to cling to the sides. Isaiah reminds us that through us, God's light shines. Israel, Tikkun Olam, these noble causes need our strength. It is time to take strong, steady breaths, to kick, to reach, to move. I will not tell you when I did my swim test, if I did the side stroke on my right or on my left, nor do I recall which stroke I used. What I will tell you is that I jumped in and I moved. So must we. There is one more truth about swimming, and that is you move forward by pushing off on what is behind you. So it is in life. The past is not an anchor, but a launching pad, if we allow it to be. Edith, Erwin, Clara, Mrs. Post, the 3.5 million survivors, and the 6 million who perished, they did not endure so that we would carry their past as a burden. That would let their enemies win. They endured so that we might rise from their strength, so that we might blossom anew. And so I returned to my own test back in the waters of Teagle Hall at Cornell University. Yes, I did make it to the other side of the pool, and yes, I graduated college. But have I passed the other swim test, the test of my Jewish life? I am no longer the 5-year-old student of Mrs. Post. I now carry the responsibilities of a teacher, not only as one of your rabbis, but as a parent to 2 teenagers, and as a Jewish adult, entrusted with door to door, the sacred work of carrying Judaism to the next generation. It is a responsibility each of us in this room shares. On this Yom Kippur, on this day of judgment, Yom Hadin, as we stand to become the first generation without Holocaust survivors, let us ask the question together, are we ready? Just this past February, I sat with many of you in the backyard of Liz and Sam Topolatsky as we gathered to say Kaddish for Liz's mother, Edith. I remember as we gathered that eve, feeling both the chill of the night air and the warmth of our Jewish community. I recall looking around me when I recited Kaddish, feeling both hope and despair. Hope as our community gathered to form a minyan, old faces and new, carrying with them the quiet comfort of connection and belonging. Even in spirit, Edith still helped remind us of the richness of our heritage, so easy to overlook in the rush of daily life. But I also felt despair as I wondered, after the 7 days of mourning, would we still remember? This winter, I will take 20 teens to Rudnitze, the birthplace of our Holocaust Torah, before we travel on to Israel. I carry the responsibility to teach them. They carry the responsibility to learn. My task is to guide. Their task is to remember and to carry it forward. Can I help them? And will they be willing to find within themselves the courage to stand apart, to carry Rudnitze, that community, and our Torah in their hearts, and to claim Israel as their own? The audacity of Yom Kippur is this: we step forward knowing there is a book, but not yet knowing our place within it. Will the story end with us, or will we inspire the next chapters? The test is before us. When the story of our generation is told, may it say that we were inscribed in the never-ending book of life. Gamar Chatima Tova.